You know that device in your pocket? Well, it's not just a product. It's actually the current champion of a 150-year-long war for connection. It's a story that's absolutely packed with legal drama, fallen empires, and just relentless innovation that honestly defines the world we live in today.
Right now, the whole fight is pretty much dominated by two titans. First up, you've got Apple. They've built this fortress, right? It's a high-margin, closed ecosystem. They don't just sell you a phone, they sell you into their entire world of services. And with a staggering 92% customer retention rate, it's a world people just don't want to leave. Then on the other side, you have Samsung, the king of volume. Their strategy is basically to be everywhere, at every single price point. But their real genius, their profit engine, is making the very components, the memory chips and displays, that power the whole industry, including for their biggest rivals.
But this modern battle between Apple and Samsung, it's really just the latest chapter in a much, much longer story. To truly understand how we got here, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. And we have to ask a question that is way more controversial than you might think. And that brings us to the original patent war. I mean, long before we were talking about software or silicon, the fight was over a simple idea: sending a human voice through a wire. And let me tell you, it was a ruthless, cutthroat race to own the future of communication itself.
So the race to the patent office was just pure chaos. For years, you had inventors all over the world tinkering with this idea. Way back in 1871, an Italian immigrant named Antonio Meucci filed a temporary patent. It was called a caveat for his teletrofono. But, and this is the tragic part, he was broke. He couldn't afford the $10 fee to renew it. That one little failure left the door wide open for what happened on February 14, 1876, a truly legendary day. In the morning, Elisha Gray's lawyer filed a patent caveat for his design. Then, just a few hours later, Alexander Graham Bell's lawyer filed a full patent application. Bell got the patent, and just 3 days later, he actually got the device to work.
Yeah, this is why Bell's victory was anything but a clean win. Meucci's supporters say that for just $10, history could have been totally different. Gray's camp, well, they point to the really striking similarities between his design and the one Bell tested, which led to accusations that Bell might have illegally peeked at Gray's filings at the patent office. Now, Bell's scientific advantage was that he understood you needed a continuous, undulatory current to transmit voice, not just the on-off clicks of a telegraph. Look, history is messy, and the birth of the telephone was about as messy as it gets.
But no matter what the controversy was, these were the words that changed everything. On March 10, 1876, using a liquid transmitter that was, frankly, very similar to Gray's design, Bell spoke into the device, and his assistant, who was in another room, heard him loud and clear. The concept wasn't a dream anymore. A voice could actually travel through a wire.
And the drama didn't stop there. Oh no, it escalated all the way to the Supreme Court. In 1888, the U.S. government itself actually sued to revoke Bell's patents, claiming fraud. Now, the case was eventually dropped, but it set this massive precedent that patents, even the ones issued by the government, could be challenged in court. This legal framework became the battlefield for every single major tech war to come, from Microsoft and Google to, Apple versus Samsung.
So, with the device invented and the lawyers having a field day, the next monumental task was, connecting the world. After all, what's the point of a phone if you've got no one to call? This led to the next great challenge: building the network itself.
The key innovation here was the telephone exchange. At first, you had human operators who would literally plug wires into a switchboard to connect calls. But this, it created some problems. The best story, by far, comes from an undertaker named Alman Strausser. He was convinced that the wife of his main competitor, who also happened to be the local switchboard operator, was routing calls meant for him to her husband's business instead. So in 1889, he invented the automatic switch, which got rid of the human element and totally paved the way for the digital networks we rely on today.
The first real step towards a mobile phone was sticking one in a car back in 1946, and it was an absolute beast. The equipment weighed nearly 40 kilograms. That's about 88 pounds. And the first handheld commercial phone, Motorola's famous Dynatac from 1983? Well, it wasn't much more accessible. It cost the equivalent of over $11,000 in today's money. Ouch.
And this brings us to the just incredible pace of change we've seen since then, which we measure in generations of mobile networks. So 1G in the 80s gave us analog voice calls, pretty basic. Then 2G in the 90s went digital and gave us the killer app, the SMS text message. Game changer. 3G in the 2000s brought us mobile internet, which set the stage for the app explosion. 4G made streaming HD video totally normal. And now, 5G is powering the whole Internet of Things. Each generation didn't just make things faster, it unlocked entirely new ways for us to live.
But all of this evolution, every single step, was leading up to one single moment, a seismic shift that would completely destroy market leaders and create the industry as we know it today.
The year was 2007. This was basically year zero for the modern smartphone.
Now, let's be really clear here. Apple did not invent the smartphone, not even close. Companies like BlackBerry and Nokia were already the undisputed kings. What Apple did was redefine it by completely ditching the physical keyboard for a multi-touch screen and putting a full desktop-class web browser right in your pocket. They changed our expectations forever.
You know, it's hard to really overstate just how dominant the old guard was. In 2007, Nokia held half of the entire global market. They were an unstoppable juggernaut. Motorola, the company that invented the cell phone, was still a huge player. Apple wasn't even on the chart. And yet, within just a few years, this entire landscape would be completely unrecognizable. So why did they fall so fast? I mean, how did that happen? It is a textbook case of something called the innovator's dilemma. Get this, Nokia had actually developed touchscreen prototypes years before the iPhone even existed, but their own management killed them. It's not that they were dumb, they were afraid. They were paralyzed by the risk of abandoning the keyboard phones that were making them billions. BlackBerry, meanwhile, just dismissed the iPhone as a toy, because they couldn't see past the needs of their corporate customers. Both of these giants were so focused on defending their past success that they couldn't see the future barreling right at them.
Which brings us right back to today, and to the next chapter in this 150-year war. So what comes after this simple glass slab that we all carry around?
If you look at the projected global shipments, you see the familiar faces, right? Samsung and Apple, right at the top. But look who's in third place. Transsion, a company that many people in North America and Europe have never even heard of. So how on earth did they get there?
They did it by not playing this same game as everybody else. Instead of trying to compete head-to-head on the global stage, Transition focused almost exclusively on the African market. They built cameras that were specifically calibrated to better capture darker skin tones. They made phones with multiple SIM slots for customers who switched between carriers to get the best signal. And they prioritized massive batteries for regions where electricity isn't always reliable. They solved real, local problems that the global giants had totally ignored.
So, looking forward, the next war is really about connectivity itself. The goal of 6G networks and direct-to-satellite services is actually simple, but it's also profound: to completely eliminate the very concept of a no-service zone. True global connection, anywhere you are on the planet, is finally actually within reach.
So we've gone from a simple wire to a supercomputer on our pocket. The next logical step in this 150-year journey is for the device to just fade into the background entirely. You know, into smart glasses, ambient AI, and computing that's just all around us. The fundamental human need to connect, that stays the same, but the form it takes is always up for grabs, and that is a battle that never, ever ends.